Welcome to episode 3 of the Hit Your Target podcast, where I'm your host Laura, and today I'm joined by Phil Calvert. Phil is a friend I gained whilst undertaking my own personal challenge, a 21k Spartan race. Phil is a personal trainer and an unstoppable force in health, wellness and resilience. Despite facing challenges with dyslexia, psoriatic arthritis, type 2 diabetes and a recent ADHD diagnosis, Phil strives daily to become the best version of himself. Phil has over 20 years of experience in physical activity, working alongside professional football and semi-professional rugby teams, and serving as an educator with World Rugby. His journey includes a master's degree in diabetes, and he's now pursuing a PhD to continue his work empowering others living with type 2 diabetes. In this episode, Phil shares insights, motivation, personal stories, and his mission to help others overcome diabetes, control their blood glucose levels, and achieve their potential. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate the show or leave a comment. It really helps us to reach more people. And don't forget to share it with anyone else who could use a little motivation today. Have a fantastic day and hit your target. Phil, thank you so much for joining me today. We've had a little bit of a chat when we did our Spartan race together, which was personally a goal of mine. Welcome to the Hit Your Target podcast.
Thank you very much indeed, Laura. And that was a very strange place to meet somebody to have a chat about doing a podcast in the Pippingford Hills, knee deep in mud, right?
Absolutely, yeah. But it was a great opportunity because we had quite a long time to battle through that and talk about personal goals as well. And what you shared on there, and I want to go into this to say actually, what are some of the big challenges that you faced?
Well, where would you like me to start? So I've got a back catalogue of things that probably, to be honest, a lot of people go through. So I'm not very special in that respect. However, I think how I've coped with them potentially is maybe the bit that makes me slightly different to other people that I've come across, or certainly people think I'm a wee bit crazy. So we can go back to I was recognised as dyslexic, which is a large percentage of the population, and then I unfortunately developed psoriatic arthritis when I was 26. And then 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And then laterally, only a year and a half ago, I was diagnosed with ADHD.
Wow.
So I've got a nightly bag of sweeties, as you would say.
Yeah. And I think when we were talking and climbing up those hills as well, you were saying that some of that you've used as your superpower, which I found really inspiring. Tell us a bit about how, and tell the listeners how you've been able to embrace that as a kind of superpower.
Yeah, I call them a superpower because I have, if you read my CV and you see where I am now today against where I have been with obviously the dyslexia, the arthritis, diabetes, and the ADHD, the outcomes are quite different to what normal people probably would be. And that might be because I've used these so-called ailments or learning issues as tools to be able to improvise. So there'll be no surprise to the listeners that some of the wealthiest people that solve problems are dyslexic, and they have dyslexia. And then you've got the gift of ADHD, which I didn't know about until I was 53. Allows you to keep taking on challenges and keep striving forward. And I always wondered why I never felt like I've achieved anything. Whenever I sat down with a psychiatrist, he basically said, "I've never seen a CV like this. It exhausts me reading it. For somebody your age, you shouldn't have been able to do all of these things." And I think that there's obviously that inner cog, and it's probably helped me using these ailments. We often hear about people with neurodiverse illness or issues that they have different coping strategies against. And I'm going to throw in the word normal. I don't think there is such a thing as a normal human being. We're all a bit quirky in our wee ways, but whenever you have a diagnosis of something, it starts to puts the jigsaws together as such. So, yeah, when I was diagnosed with the arthritis, I was told by orthopedic surgeon that I wouldn't walk unaided ever again. And now this is coming from reaching that stage just as the rugby profession was coming out of amateur into professional. I was played at a very high level. I played alongside British Lions and Scottish international rugby players and Watsonians in Scotland. to be told I wouldn't be able to walk again unaided, that didn't really resonate with me and my lifestyle journey up to that point. But I really was quite ill. At that stage, I had a Zimmer frame and I couldn't really move my hips very well, or a very limited range of motion in my ankles and my knees. So I could see where he was coming from. Uh, yeah, I took myself to alternative medicine as such. I went to a Chinese herbal medicine, and within 7 months, I had left. At that stage, then I was on walking sticks. I left my walking sticks, and in 2002, which is a matter of 4 years later, I ran the New York Marathon. That's a different story. That's a different. I've got a story about the New York Marathon as well, but anyway, that's a different story.
Okay, we'll come back to that. But I'm really interested to know, what was the point where, you said there that that didn't sit with your values pretty much, of not being able to walk again. So was that kind of the underpinning bit that when, I have a choice here, and that was the moment where you said that that's not going to happen, or how did that?
Yeah, I'm quite strong-minded, as you would say. So if I want to do something and somebody turns around to me and says, "You'll never do that," or "That's not going to happen," well, all of a sudden that's a red rag to bull, and I make it happen. And I do it because I don't do it out of spite. I do it because somebody doesn't think that I can. Therefore, I have to be. I challenge myself to achieve things that people may not think that I'm capable of. And that's just, maybe that's a survival thing. Maybe that's just a natural survival. We've got different levels of survival and ways to cope with situations. But I would definitely say that I'm the type of guy that can improvise well and will survive. So where am I right now? Let's just look around, because this is the crazy thing, right? We met each other in a half marathon run around a bog moor, jumping over 30 obstacles. Some was fire, some was 30 foot in the air. We were climbing ropes. We were exhausted, but we were smiling, right? So how did we get to that point? Well, I met you through a mutual friend, and that mutual friend and I are friends because we're both personal trainers. So there's a guy that's got diabetes, type 2 diabetes. He's a personal trainer, and I don't really fit the mold. If you see me in the diabetic clinic, it's kind of like, who brought their personal trainer? What's he doing here? So things don't really match up. And again, this is where I am maybe a little bit different, that I don't have expectations on myself because I don't have a limiting factor. If I want to do something, I just make a way of doing it.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about the New York Marathon then, because I'm intrigued in that
Oh
story.
yeah, that's right. Okay, cool. So yes, two of my good friends, Chris and Jamie, said they'd run it with me, which is great. I think they just wanted to go to New York for the weekend. Anyway, the three of us headed out, and we ended up in a hotel sharing this big, massive room in the Marriott Hotel, Times Square. We decided to go and carb load. So off we took ourselves to Planet Hollywood, just because we're in New York, why wouldn't you? And I chose to have a prawn linguine. And this is on the Thursday night. Okay, we just arrived in New York. So it's Thursday night. We've got Friday to prepare. Saturday, you get everything organized. And Sunday morning, you get up at the crack of dawn and you run. So we decided Thursday night, with prawn linguine. Friday, let's go to a show on Broadway. It was the Graduate, and Kathleen Turner was the actress. So there was an allure there for us young men. On the Friday morning, when we went to the UN building to register and get our registration for the race, I started to feel a bit green, and needed to say that I got food poisoning from the lovely prawns in my prawn linguine, and I spent the entire time in New York in the suite of the New York. The hotel, Marriott Hotel in New York. Let's just say I was thankful it was a nice hotel because the bath was quite nice. And I was literally turned inside out for the best part of 36 hours. The lad said, "You don't have to do this race," but having been from where I was, where I actually had to teach myself to walk, and then my brother helped me learn how to run again. To actually being at the stage where I trained enough to be able to start this New York Marathon. nothing was going to stop me. So I arrived at the start line. We got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. You get the buses over to Staten Island, where the start is, and we were at the start. I felt great. The adrenaline and the emotion and all was there. And after 14 miles, I kind of ended up in a first aid tent because I obviously hadn't any energy in my body. I ended up with a little glucose drip. So a wee bit like you see in the movies, I grabbed the bag and I squeezed all of this stuff into my body. I basically stole a lot of sweeties and a foil jacket. And this was at 14 miles. Uh, I decided I'm just going to finish this. So I literally just force marched my way to the finish line. And it took me just under 6 hours, 5 hours, 54 minutes or something or other. Uh, and I got my medal. I finished it because I said I
Wow.
would. That was my goal. I was going to finish the New York Marathon after all that. So that was. If I could do that, then yeah,
Oh
I
my
could do
goodness,
more.
yeah. And it's amazing. I think that is, testament to what the body can actually endure if our mind lets it to, do so. Because I think I remember reading David Goggins' book Can't Hurt Me, and the stuff that he went through is very similar, where you've got that you've just done this marathon, and physically your body kind of just like collapsed.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean,
I've read the
that's
David Goggins book. He's a quite an inspiring man. He's also quite a scary man. How he's able to take himself to where he takes himself, right? But I do resonate a lot with what he says. He talk, I'm kind of that guy. I was able to do a marathon, right? I was like, brilliant. Let's see, what can I do next? What can I do next? Yeah, 2018, 2017, Doddie Weir, my good pal. Unfortunately, I heard that he had motor neuron disease and developed it. And a fascinating man in his own right, his adversity to getting on with life and inspiring others to take every single moment and enjoy every moment of life. But trying his quest to try and find a cure for others, although he knew it wouldn't happen for him, but it's totally inspiring. And uh, I suggested that I would run a marathon to raise some money for his foundation. And I think his phrase was, but you're not very good at running. But it wasn't kind of said like that. It was kind of said the good old rugby chat way. So and then he put the phone down on me. I spoke to him again, and I said, "Right, okay, so listen, I'm going to do this. In fact, I'm going to do one every week for the
wow.
whole of 2018. I've gone 52 marathons, and the phone went down again, and then I played with Scott Hastings. He's a good pal as well. He was one of the committee men for the chat for this foundation, sat on the board, and I said to Scotty, I'm going to do this. And Scott's like, right, cool. That's insane. The next thing, Jenny, who's Scotty's late wife, uh, she said, Phil, that's insane, mate. Your body won't be able to cope with that because I'm a front row rugby player. I weigh 100 kilograms, and I'm not really designed for running marathons, if I'm being honest. But anyway, yeah, enough people said you won't do it, so I did it, and I managed to complete 52 marathons without injury and raised what nearly £18,000 for the foundation. So it was a pretty
Wow.
good gig. It was a pretty good gig.
Yeah.
So again, that is with arthritis.
Yeah, and is it when you're doing that, because that is such a mammoth task to achieve? What
Mm.
what were some of the things? Because there must have been some limiting beliefs that came up and during that journey, or even like some physical barriers.
There were a lot of dark runs. Uh, on some of the weeks, I had to break the marathon distances down into just chunks. So because
Mm.
I did reach a stage where my body, as Jenny quite rightly said, my body didn't really like me for doing that. Had I been a seasoned runner, well, you might have thought, well, that's a pretty big challenge. But I was not a runner. If I'm being honest, I don't like running, but I do it to challenge myself. So uh, there was lots of negative times. There was lots of times, but I just dug down and I thought, well, I I can do this. And there are particularly Dodd. I was thinking about Dodd. He would, as much as he would hate to run a marathon, he would love to be able to run a marathon. And
Mm.
I put my mindset in the fact that I can do things, the things that I can control, the things that I do. Uh, I have to do the best I can do, right? because we have, like, it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in, you're always going to find issues that are challenging, right? So you can accept to take the challenge, or you can walk away and regret it. And I would rather try something and fail it than just not start it and regret it. I once read a quote from Richard Branson. He said, "The art of success is to say yes to everything." Every opportunity, say yes, and then spend the next 3 weeks working out whether you can do it. And if you can't, then just be polite and say thanks very much, but I've got a bit too much on. I can't fulfill that. Then you never lose an opportunity, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think that there is a lot in that. And it's just what we say yes to, even though we probably feel nervous or apprehensive about, that's the growth. And it's only from pushing ourselves outside of that comfort zone that we actually develop as people.
Yeah. I mean, as you I think I mentioned to you, we did, for everybody listening, we spent 5.5 hours running around this mountain, so we did talk a lot. But
Mm.
I mentioned that I also did a natural bodybuilding competition. And during that competition, there was a chap who was training for an Ironman triathlon, full Ironman, 140.4 miles. And he said to me, he says, bodybuilding, he says, that's easy. You should try being an Ironman. And I was like, dude, when you have to eat and measure food for a 6 month period and only eat what you can eat and train as hard as you can train to be in the best stage, to get on the stage in front of hundreds of people, to present yourself in the best way, I mean, that is hard work. That's like Japanese torture, where there's a small drip of pain. You don't notice it until you notice it. And whenever you notice it, it's horrific. So he challenged me. He basically said, you couldn't, there's no way you could do an Ironman. I'm like, yeah, of course I can. So I signed up and I did an Ironman the following year, just to spite him.
Wow.
And right. So yeah, maybe there's something in my psychology that's a bit different to people. I don't know. I do take challenges.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I guess, it's also understanding like the because you're a personal trainer as well, you know how far you can push your body and you
Mm.
know the exercises that you need to do to build up to that. So there must have been a lot of training that you did as well as just doing that event.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. So whenever you're training for like an Ironman, it's not just about endurance. You have to have your core strong. That's your fundamentals. If you don't have a strong core, you can't swim properly. If you don't have a strong core, you can't cycle properly. If you don't have a strong core, you will not be able to run upright. You'll not be able to. You just put pressure on yourself. So I had to do a lot of work, particularly in my core. But due to my position, I think in rugby, my core, it was my entire position. And when I don't know if you know about rugby, but if you're in the front row and you're a prop, basically you've got you're pushing against another 8 guys, and you've got 6 guys pushing you towards them. So you listen,
Right.
you're the concertina, you're the little bit in the middle, and your core strength has to be phenomenal. Otherwise, you're going to get hurt, right? So over
Mm,
years and years of that, I've developed a really strong base core.
mm,
So that element of the training was kind of there. I just need to challenge and stimulate it. But then the real challenge for me was, as I said, the running. And when you get faced with a marathon at the end of a 112-mile cycle, and you've just swum 2.5 miles in the sea, it's you have to break it down to chunks to achieve it, because it just, if you thought about what you're actually contemplating at the beginning of the race, at the start of the race, you just turn around and go back to your bed. It's
yeah.
stupid. It's great when you
Yeah.
finish, but it's stupid when you're stupid to start it.
Yeah, and I think it's about understanding. Yeah, I can tap into some of those resources. So, like, you knew you had a strong core, great, that's the foundation. And then, how do you build on that? And who do I need to pull in to help me with other things? And how can people spur me on with that mindset? There's all
Mhm.
those elements that go into that.
I did that with, again, I had, I was just being diagnosed with the diabetes as well. So I had to contemplate
Yeah,
the blood glucose, and, because you're burning a lot of calories, and you need to take carbohydrates and to be able to fuel the body, to be able the body to do what it needs to do. Uh,
yeah,
and the training program, the long cycle rides, the cycle ride for 100 miles on a Saturday, get back on the bike on a Sunday, do another 100 miles. So all these things can affect your body. But again, it's about planning and organizing. And that was the stage where I started my master's degree in diabetes. So I actually understood what diabetes was. I live with it. So if I'm going to live with this thing, well, then I need to understand what it is. So, and in the world I live in, people want to get fit and healthy, and a lot of people, unfortunately, develop these ailments, these types of diabetes, type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, because they don't move, and they don't have the physical literacy, physical activity literacy to understand why they need to move and how that affects the body. And as you quite rightly said, I've been doing I've been training people for a long time now. It's so important that we know about diabetes and we help those living with diabetes, because unfortunately there's just not enough information and guidance for people.
Yeah, and so I want to talk to you about this as well because diabetes has become such a passion of yours,
Mm.
and now you're wanting to help other people with diabetes. So, tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, well, so I completed a master's degree, and then I was asked to go on further to my PhD. So my PhD, I'm looking at digital programming and the effects of online digital programming, exercise programs, when those living with type 2 diabetes, and the effects on their blood glucose levels and their cholesterol ratios, but also adherence. So what I've done is that I've recognized through my research that the NHS is a wonderful thing, but it just doesn't have the time, and it certainly doesn't have the resources available for physical activity. Okay, so there are certain courses that are brilliant that are run by NHS. There's wonderful people there with wonderful knowledge, but the bottom line is you have to move. And the for my sort of research and during my masters, when I was pulling my master's thesis together, I realized that physical inactivity is not due because people are lazy. It's because they're confused. They don't know what to do, and that's called physical literacy, physical activity literacy. So I decided that I'd take it upon myself to design a course. And over the last year, I've kind of been in the quiet, been working with a couple of my clients that are pre-diabetic or diabetic. And I've created this program called 12 Months and Beyond. And it's a year-long program to for the person living with pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, or if they're obese, that they actually control their glucose by the end of it rather than glucose controlling them. So it's all about behavioral change. We talked about
Yeah,
behavioral change and the importance
yeah,
of behavioral change. So it's not a rush job. It's a 12-month project, and it's broken into
yeah,
four little chunks. We do blast off, and the child loses between 5 and 10% of body weight in the first 3 months, and then we sustain that in the next chunk, the next 3 months. Then we start planning future goals, and then in the last quarter, we end up focusing on actual achieving those goals. And then through that, I've got a medical doctor, and I've got a psychologist and a dietitian. And also, one of my friends now, his name is Sai King, who is one of the hairy bikers.
oh, okay,
Sai and Dave wrote a fantastic book, a diabetes book, and they went on the journey with Professor Taylor from Newcastle University, and they both followed their diet book and they lost 3 stone. So
yeah,
we're
I
using that
remember
as a
that.
result. And Sai's going to pop in and out and give people a bit of motivation. So we do that. Yeah, it's a 12 month program. So it's pretty cool. The guys that were uh, my sort of guinea pigs. So Abby lost 47.5 kilograms in her first year.
Wow.
Phil, so Abby's 26. Phil is just retired, and he retired and he wasn't physically well because he sat entire life behind a desk under stress, and he's lost 20 kilograms. And then I've got Linda, who's in her 70s, and she's lost 35 pounds, 5.5 kilograms. So it's quite incredible how the body will adapt and change if you know how to help it adapt and change. And yeah, these guys are living proof. It's it's about consistency, it's about support, and it's about understanding what you should do. And that big word, that big a 3 letter word, why you should do it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, I mean, I always kind of say there's sort of three big pillars that you need to tackle, and the first one being habits.
Hmm.
What are our habits serving us? Are they good habits or bad habits, and how can we change them? our conditioning. So, what are we being told? What are the things that we've developed over the years? What's the media telling us? Other expectations?
Yeah.
And then our emotions, because, we know when you said you face those dark days, you're tired, you're stressed, whatever else,
Hmm.
the emotion can hijack our thinking.
Hmm.
Um, so, do you find those things apply in that circumstance with someone who's pre-diabetic?
Oh no, absolutely. So I remember the day when I was in disbelief. So I'm a personal trainer, and I already conquered one success, which is being able to move unaided and being able to be physically able, being a personal trainer with still living with psoriatic arthritis. So all of a sudden be told, right, you've got type 2 diabetes. I'm like, sorry, really? And I only went there, but I didn't recognize the symptoms. I went there because I just said, I can't stop drinking water. I'm really thirsty. And then byproduct of that is you go to the toilet a lot. So anyway, they did the test, and I'm like, really? Wow. Okay, cool. So you've got type 2 diabetes now. And I felt like I had let myself down. I felt ashamed that what have I done to myself that I've done this? And then over the years, I've realized that it's not something I've done to myself because I was reasonably, always been a fit, healthy guy. It's just my body has just, that's how my body is. And I just have to accept it and live with it. So when it comes to people, when they get diagnosed, there definitely is an element of, oh my God, am I going to die? Because there's an association, and quite rightly so. If you don't respect what you have or you're living with, you will have a lower life expectancy than somebody that doesn't have type 2 diabetes. So you have to take ownership of it. You have to respect what you have, and then you have to shift it. And that's what my website and my model is called. It's called shifting diabetes. So we shift the glucose down to control your diabetes. That doesn't mean we're going to get away from being diabetic. I'm going to be diabetic all my life. I might be in remission, but I've still got type 2 diabetes.
Mm.
Because if I start eating carbohydrates and don't train, well, the glucose is going to come high, and then potentially it's going to cause nerval damage. And I want to be able to walk about and run about as much as I can, as long as I can. But again, there's people out there that don't. That's not their thing. That physical activity. But you have to ask yourself why, and it's the why. Why would you choose not to make yourself better? So there's obviously history. So that could be circumstance of an event. It could be physical or emotional. That basically you need the psychology. That's why we've got Andrea on board to help with psychology, to help people if they need to go and speak to her privately, they can. But she'll give nuggets throughout the second half of the year and gaining goals and thinking about catastrophizing. If you fall off the wagon, what do you do? How do you cope with it? Strategies, etc. But yeah, there's a huge amount of support that is not just about physical activity.
Mm.
I mean, it's crazy, right? I say to people, let's start with walking. Just do 10,000 steps.
Mm.
And sometimes people look at you as if you're crazy. Really? You're a personal trainer, you're telling me to go for a walk? Well, yeah, because that's all your body right now can handle.
Yeah.
Because you haven't, say, for example, you've got 46% body fat and you haven't done any cardiovascular training for the last 10 years. Well, guess what? As soon as you go on a treadmill, you're going to feel rotten. You're going to feel unwell. Your energy systems are going to be working. Your nutrition, your neurological pathways, your energy system, everything's not going to work efficiently. You got to start from scratch, and it's literally baby steps. So you just got to know how to work with the individual. And there's a huge amount of emotion. And these three guys that I trialed it with, they're friends for life now, right? Because I've invested into them and they've invested into me, and we're now I'm there to support them, and it's great. uh when you see somebody change and turn, like Phil went to his doctor only 4 weeks ago, and the doctor was looking for problems and he couldn't find it. He says your cholesterol's good, your blood pressure's good, you're in remission for type 2 diabetes. I mean, it's wonderful, right? And he's retired, and he can now enjoy his retirement being a fit, healthy man. rather than
Amazing.
rather than going into retirement, as a lot of people do, and they don't enjoy it because they're not physically able to, or
Yeah.
they come across illnesses that could have been addressed had they just moved a little bit more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we move more, and it's a really simple process. Well, it's a really simple process if you've got somebody that knows how to help them. But on your own, it's, as you said, one of your pillars is the marketing and branding, what people get told. I mean, could you imagine a world if every chocolate bar just was covered white and it just had the name Mars or Twix or Sneakers or right? You wouldn't be drawn, you wouldn't be attracted to a brand. You wouldn't be attracted to the chocolate bar because it's the power
Yeah.
of marketing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if
Yeah,
we
for
could just
sure.
control, if we could just control that, then the world would be a healthier place. Simple.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very true. Um, so what's your next big target then, Phil?
Oh, well, I my next so apart from my obviously the work thing and helping people get on board and get through and get life changing, I kind of want to try and work on a wee model of 24 people a year. Uh, apart from that, physically, my own little challenge. Uh, my professor at university, who's my mentor and guide for the PhD, he's an ex-Royal Marine, and he's from Gibraltar, and he's one of the nicest guys you could ever meet, and he's in his late 50s, and he suggested to me that we ran the Edinburgh to Glasgow ultra marathon, which is along the Union Canal, 56 miles, and we've got to try and complete it in 24 hours. Stupidly, I said yes. Why not?
Of
So
course, why not?
that's later in the year. Earlier in the year, I've decided I'm going to really challenge myself, and I'm going to try and do another natural bodybuilding at the age of 54. So I'm going to try and get to stage one more time. So I did it 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and I'm going to try and be better. So I want to be the best version I can be at 54, 55, so that I've got a 16-year-old. He's 16 next month. I want to leave a little bit of a mark in him that you're never too late to just do things that are brilliant, right? That you can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to do, that's the plan. And then obviously we've talked about hitting another Spartan somewhere maybe a little bit less wet and
Yeah.
muddy than
Yeah. Yeah.
typically.
I really like less mud, please.
Less mud. Yeah, they kind of said it was a Spartan, but it was more like a tough mother, wasn't it? But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Massively.
that's the goals. Now, you have to listen to your body as well. So there might be things that I don't achieve. As you get a bit older, you do have to listen to your body a little bit more.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
but I'm pretty strong-headed, so I suspect you'll see photographs of me doing my natural bodybuilding and possibly one or two photographs of me after I've completed this stupid run.
Definitely, yeah. I will be looking out for those. And for anyone listening, I will share all of your social handles in the show notes. And is there a website or the best
Okay,
place
yeah,
for people to get hold of
yeah.
you?
I've got my website is www.fweducation.co.uk. I've got an Instagram, which is shifting_diabetes, and you'll give bits and bobs out that people can contact me through messaging, private messaging, or whatever it might be. But anybody that's interested, anybody that knows anybody that's living with pre-diabetes, diabetes, or even if you think you're in the zone of being obese, guys, give me a call and we can have a chat and see if it's for you, because taking control is the most incredible, empowering thing when you decide to take control of your own body,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
very, very few people take control of their own body. Most people accept the body they've got. And that's not
Mm.
what we should do. We should really challenge ourselves. And the lovely work that you do with people, helping them to recognize that they can take control and
Yeah.
win their battle, it's incredible, right? And it's very similar to what I do. I just do mine in a physical way,
Hmm.
with physical support. You're obviously your business mentor and you guide people in how to achieve wonderful things in your spectrum. But it's very similar. I always told my mother always said, "You're always a half full cup, son." But yeah, I look at a cup; it's always half full. It's never half empty.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And it's choosing and having that choice. So I was going to ask, just to finish, what's one piece of advice that you would give someone today that's listening about how to achieve their goals?
I think that, yeah, if I was going to leave it with anybody else, is don't don't accept her version of yourself,
Mm.
right? So the decisions you make change your direction of your life, and in some respects, we are the outcome of our own decisions. So you can choose to seek help whenever you need help. You can choose to do the opposite and not do that, but the outcomes will be different. So uh, as long as you realize that we only have a short time in this wonderful world, that you maximize your opportunity to be the best version that you can be, and accept that it's really cool to realize that you can't do it all yourself. There's times where you have to reach out for help, and there's people out there. I'll leave this last one with you. My primary teacher, a lady called Miss Strand, who wasn't particularly nice to me. She told me that well, on a regular basis, I was a dunce. The dunce used to have to wear this dunce cap in the corner in 1976 or what it was. It was pretty bad. But she told me I was thick and I would never achieve anything. And with dyslexia, I kind of proved it right, because in those days she wasn't recognised terribly well. I left school with 7 GCSEs and I'm now doing a PhD. So
Wow.
go figure, right? Just
Yeah.
because somebody tells you something, prove them wrong. Go and
Yeah.
get what
Yeah.
you gotta go and get what you can get. Be the best version you can be, and that's really it.
Yeah. I love that. Be the best version you can be. Perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. And thank you so much for sharing those insights. And certainly, if there's anybody listening that is diabetic or pre-diabetic or knows someone who is and is concerned, then I really encourage you to reach out, because I know you're an absolute fountain of knowledge on that, Phil. So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. And yeah, thanks for joining me.
Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. Have a wonderful day.
If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate the show or leave a comment. It really helps us reach more people. And don't forget to share it with anyone else who could use a little motivation today. Have a fantastic day and make sure you hit your targets.